Chapter 5, The Geodesic Shortcut. Arrival in Colchis and the King's Challenge. The Argo approached Golden Shores, the voyage from the Doleone's Arborea calm, without incident. Colchis, a land of oppressive heat and ancient magic, that served well as an infiltration point for the Fallen's early influences. Near their birth was a well. Quite frankly, it was difficult to determine if it was a house or a tree. In fact, it was both, the long mangrove trees' roots and branches woven into walls and balconies. Strange apparata and series of gears and pulleys scattered sporadically around the house. As the group passed by, Jason had gotten into a conversation with the resident of the domicile. Idman was overcome with curiosity. So far during the campaign he had held more toward the back of the pack. Having a gift of foresight of his future, he had visions of his own death during the mission had made him cautious. But the naturally calm and tranquil setting with a few cute piglets running around seemed safer than most. While playing with one particularly friendly pig, Idman sat on an inclined piece of wood. The weight of his body collapsed the board flat. The piglet's eyes opened wide as it turned and ran away. Idman, hearing a deafeningly loud rumbling sound, turned. The last thing he saw was a series of wooden slabs bearing down on him. Jason was enjoying the day, a smooth sail and now a pleasant walk. This stop was shaping up to be a cakewalk. He just needed some coordinates from King Aeëtes and he should soon be on his way. "Hello, friend," a wizened older gentleman greeted him. "What brings you to King Aeëtes?" Just then there was a loud crashing sound followed by a scream, then silence. The group rushed to the other side of the house to find a group of pigs running around and staring at a large wooden contraption, and a growing red pool coming from below it. A last whispered breath, "Jason, turn back." After parting ways with the profusely apologetic fellow, the rest of the walk was somber. They arrived at the palace to address the king, whom was accompanied by his daughter, Medea. King Aeëtes, a ruler whose power was as volatile as the land's own fires, greeted Jason with a veneer of hospitality. The king was a master of the semantic trap.
"The golden fleece is not here,"
Aeëtes declared, his voice echoing in the grand hall.
"It rests in the northern wastes, in the land of the Procyon Hyperborealis, Unicornicopia. While I do not agree with your quest, pass my test, and the exact coordinates to its location are yours."
The king chuckled to himself. The challenge was laid out.
"It's just yoking some cows and plowing a field,"
the king understated, yoking the fire-breathing, mechanically enhanced bulls gifted from Hephaestus, and proceeding to plow a field hard as iron was essentially impossible. Medea gasped and was about to appeal to her father when Jason agreed to the terms. Jason, buoyed by the subtle manipulations of Medea and wanting to impress her, would face the challenge with a hero's confidence, believing the prize was simply the map he was promised. On the way to the fields where the unruly bulls were kept, Medea explained the task at hand.
The bulls are more machines, bull hybrid creations, that produce massive amounts of heat. Many of my father's king's men have tried and failed to yoke them, leaving them to roam as they wish. It has resulted in many buildings and crops burning before harvest.
He needed a way to survive the first task, yoking the fire-breathing bulls. The king's daughter, a curious and morally compromised figure, offered her aid.
This is where the magic
They arrived at a hut smelling of incense and entered. She provided Jason with a jar of thick, mineral-based ointment, a silicon-based gel derived from the volcanic nectar of the fallen.
"Rub this upon yourself,"
she whispered,
"and no fire will harm you."
She also gave him a small, unassuming stone, dull grey like granite.
"It is the Ctice Taylor Veritars, a piece of the philosopher's loom,"
she whispered.
"It helps one perceive all the threads of truth."
Jason, focused on the task at hand, quickly used it to comb his beard, tucked it into his belt and largely ignored it. After some mixing, chanting, and rubbing, they re-emerged. Jason, now a tint of silver from the silicon ointment Medea had applied to his muscular frame. The bulls were silicon life forms themselves. Their fire-breathing was not a magical flame, but the natural metabolic byproduct of a gaseous compound, a volatile silicon hydride. Upon contact with the open oxygen in the air, it spontaneously ignited with a blinding flash, a smaller-scale instance of the concept of fire and brimstone. Jason coated himself in the mineral gel, which insulated him from the intense, pyrophoric flaming flatulence. He yoked the beasts and plowed the field. The silicon ointment protected him, allowing him to complete the task with brute force rather than true harmony. 2. The illusion, the hexapus, and the pivot. From a distance, Medea watched the arena, certain she had remembered Jason to look taller and more imposing when she first heard tell of him through the new news network of harpies. Calling one near that was covering the proceedings in Colchis replayed the earlier harpy drones, surveillance HAPs used by the Fallen, projected a holographic overlay. The footage she reviewed during the plowing confirmed it. The hero battling a multi-limbed hexapus in the Argo was in fact not Jason as noted, but a larger, more imposing figure, the visage of Hercules. Jason then planted the dragon's teeth. Jason, ever the pragmatic hero, planted all but one. As he worked, unaware of the unseen reality, the first plowed field accepted the entropic seeds. The silicon residue from the Miraculum Octaria ensured the new, counterfeit thorny root had a strong first hold, binding the chaos to the soil. Jason saw nothing but a small branch with a glowing flower-like bloom, but beneath the surface, the tendril of the KrakenNetwork began to bloom in the dark earth. The moment the counterfeit data seeds hit the silicon-rich soil, the mycelial server node, they triggered a defense protocol. From the disturbed earth, fierce, six-legged scorpions emerged and advanced on Jason as the new Sparto. Jason, unnerved by the sight of the creatures, instinctively remembered the unassuming grey stone Medea gave him. He pulled it from his belt and hurled it in desperation. The stone bounced harmlessly off of the leading scorpion. The scorpions completely ignored the stone and continued their advance, walking right past the small, pulsing artifact. As they passed, the stone simply sank into the ground, its purpose activated but its immediate effect missed. Suddenly, an enormous, white, web-weaving spider, the loom's white blood cell, boiled up from beneath the earth and dragged the scorpions down into the mycelial network below the surface, eradicating the infection. Once the field was done, Aeëtes, a man of his word, technically, hesitantly presented Jason with a map and directions. "There are your coordinates," he said, pointing to a long, winding sea route around Strait of Land, heavily patrolled by the Colchian fleet. As the residual internal image of a perfect hero flickered out of her mind, Medea saw Jason for who he truly was, a man of dumb luck and human frailty. Her calculating mind began to meditate, to deliberate, contrive, and decide the best path forward, a skill embedded in the very meaning of her name. Her gaze shifted from Jason receiving his map to the rest of the Argo's crew who were enjoying some shore time and the festivities of having watched their captain put his back into the work. They were all of them some formidable physical specimens, her gaze settling finally on the solid, stable presence of King Aeëtes nearby, a man who promised a stable throne rather than a chaotic quest. 3. The parallel plans. That same day, two critical divergent paths unfolded simultaneously, weaving together the fates of all involved. The Argo's location, the Argonauts returning to the Argo soon passed by the wizened gentleman outside. "Hello friends," the stranger called out. "How did you fare with the meeting?" "It went as well as it could. I have my course now," Jason replied as he waved the map. "Curious, I was sure the king would have denied you." "The name's Daedalus, by the way." Jason nodded. "He seems to be a man of his word. He set terms. I fulfilled my end. Simple." Daedalus thoughtfully stroked his beard. "It is because the King Aeëtes, a man of his word, that has me pondering. He has sworn to prevent all travelers from reaching the Cairo-Crotoma simple gates." Daedalus looked at the crew. "You should head that way, over the mountain pass. The king's ships will be waiting for you to go by sea." Jason shook his head. "There is no way I am leaving my ship here." Daedalus winked. "Indeed, you shall carry it with you. Perhaps I can be of some assistance." "Thanks," Jason laughed, "but this load would be too much for you, old man." The old man joined the laughter. No, son, I have no intention of pushing, but could help you work smarter rather than harder," leading them to a stack of sophisticatedly tethered and joined timbers. Daedalus's prototypes, awaiting their next unwieldy load. The Trouse was a physical manifestation of a being who understood the quiet, harmonious rhythms of the loom, what some ancient texts referred to as eurythmics, a true druidic wisdom that contrasted with the tech shortcuts he was now offering. Daedalus seemed to be somewhat of a jack of all trades. "Jason, since the terrible accident with your shipmate, I can't bear to look at them any longer, but they will make you journey over the mountains much easier." entirely unaware of their providence or the Haybert work, deemed it a hack and ordered the crew to use them, a pragmatic solution that saved days of travel. As he looked at the stained planks, a faint, almost imperceptible sense of regret flickered across his face. But in a way, it was like a little piece of him was coming with him. Medea's location. At that very moment, Medea was meeting with Orgias, who had stayed behind after switching the red and white sail of the Argo with a green one from Medea's own brother's vessel. She proposed a grand alliance. Orgias would become the patron for Daedalus, a local fellow attuned to the loom, but with no shortage of ambition, who was anxiously looking for a building project to further prove his greatness.
Nycto has a grand design.
Medea stated.
I have Hephaestus the know-how, but Daedalus can learn their secrets. Combined with his knowledge of the loom, he could help make it a reality for your kingdom.
They discussed a future Primrose Palace, a multi-stage prototype that would manage the king's fabled stables and provide a foundation for the spectacle the silicone visitors wished to bestow on humanity. Medea saw a path to power and security, entirely separate from the ship Jason was about to haul overland. 4. The Great Portage and the Grand Misdirect. As the sun set, the true escape began. Jason led his crew, using the treads to drag the Argo, which now bore rather underwhelming olive-green sails lashed over the gear on the outer deck, over the land bridge. The figurehead of Serendipity swayed from side to side like she was on a litter or a howdah. Mind my finish, darling, she cooed to one of the Argonauts dragging the prow. This is so much more refined than a simple sea passage. Miles away, Medea put her final plan in motion. She medicated her brother, Aeëtes, pointing him towards a distant fishing vessel, the place Jason would have been had he gone by sea, and convincing him it was the escaping Argo. Then, when her father arrived on the pier a short time later, she pointed to her brother's vessel, which sported distinctive red and white sails.
If Arthur, I beg you, let him be on his way. No good shall come from your pursuit.
Nay, daughter, the quest he has undertaken could have grave outcomes if he is successful in retrieving that cursed fleece.
The same trick that had fooled the king's son repeating, now luring the full fleet. Meanwhile, the Argo crested over the mountainous ridge, the green sail providing added camouflage for the Argo as it slipped away north, unseen. Jason led his crew, using the treads to drag the Argo, believing his own cleverness would avoid any hexpurpose that had seemed to spawn each time they prepared to leave a location. The figurehead of Serendipity swayed from side to side like she was enjoying her parade through the jungle. And who is this handsome specimen, she cooed, her wooden eyes fixing on a specific crewman. Phileas, isn't it? Such a stable-looking young man. It was a clear quip directed at his status as Orgias' son. Phileas met her gaze with a smirk. And that's no bull. The king's revelation. King Aeëtes watched from the prow of his flagship, a storm of vengeance in his eyes. His fleet had successfully cornered the target ship, the red-sailed vessel they were sure was the Argo. Aeëtes himself boarded, ready to end Jason's life. He kicked the bound man onto his back to face his king. The face was wrong. Father! Aeëtes mumbled, confusion clouding his features as the last of the drug's haze lifted. The sword dropped from King Aeëtes' hand. His rage evaporated, replaced by devastating realization. He had been tricked, blinded by rage. Unaware his own son was used as the ultimate decoy in a complex shell game, manipulating her father's rage and natural assumptions against him. The king had vanquished his target, only to find he had defeated his own kin. The Argo was long gone, the straight-line shortcut having made their escape swift and clean. Aeëtes was left standing over his son, utterly defeated by his daughter's genius, a broken man open to manipulation or simply being abandoned. Departure and a ticking clock. After a few misadventures amongst the hills and mountains, the crew began the final, steep descent toward the ocean's edge. The log and tank tread platforms worked perfectly, providing an unhindered, smooth, and fast ride downhill. Phileas, son of King Aeëtes, one of the remaining, wiser Argonauts, recalled the wizened gentleman Daedalus's instruction, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Do not push the prototypes too hard. We are to spin and descend the slope backwards. Jason and the others, eager to reach the sea, ignored the advice. They pushed the treads past the crest of the slope of the final, challenging terrain before the coastline. With a groan of overstressed ancient mechanics, the platforms shattered, the Argo sliding uncontrolled into the muddy wetlands. The finals pass would have to be made using only muscle, dragging the heavy Argo through a muddy stretch of coastline that was intended to be the final, difficult obstacle before the open sea. Serendipitous groaned in protest as she was dragged through the muck.
Oh my, do be a dear Phileas, and get me clean. I simply can't be seen like this in the next port.